He didn't stalk victims. He stalked the city. And for one long boiling summer, no lock, no prayer, and no neighborhood was safe. The devil doesn't knock. He walks in. In the summer of 1985, Los Angeles. It was the kind of heat that clung to your skin. Windows cracked open, vans humming, people trying to sleep, trying to breathe, trying to stay alive. And in that heat, something darker crept in. Not a ghost, not a legend, but a man. Dressed in black, armed with a gun, a knife, a hammer, whatever was closest. No motive, no pattern, no mercy. He didn't just kill. He whispered in the dark. He waited for you to feel safe. Then he broke through your window and changed your life forever. They called him the Night Stalker. The fear was real, and it didn't care if you were rich or poor, young or old, man or woman. He struck in Eagle Rock, Mission Viejo, Rosemead, Whittier, even San Francisco. And what he left behind were mutilated bodies, satanic symbols, and survivors too broken to even speak. The LAPD couldn't predict him. The media couldn't name him. And the people? Well, they didn't sleep. They barricaded, prayed, and some loaded guns they hadn't touched in years. We didn't know if we were safe even inside our homes, one survivor later said. Because he didn't break in for money. He broke in to destroy. But who was he really? This wasn't just about horror. This was about psychology. What kind of man murders a child and then prays to Satan? What kind of man lets a witness live, just to say, tell them, the Night Stalker was here? This wasn't random evil. This was intentional darkness stitched together by trauma, drugs, and something far worse, choice. He didn't wear a mask. He didn't care if you saw him. He wanted you to. Because fear was his real weapon. And when they finally caught him, he smiled, not because he was done, but because the cameras had arrived. He didn't have a type. He had a message. Most serial killers follow a method. They have a type, a preference, a pattern, something that narrows the scope. Richard Ramirez didn't. He struck young and old, male and female, day and night. From Los Angeles to San Francisco. Sometimes he raped. Sometimes he murdered. Sometimes he did both, and whispered satanic prayers over the bodies. He wasn't predictable. He was chaotic by design, and that made him very terrifying. Let's go back to June 1984 when the first known attack occurred. Jenny Vincow, 79, was found stabbed to death and nearly decapitated in her apartment near downtown LA. No suspect. No sign of forced entry. Months passed, and then in March 1985 the killings returned, this time faster and darker. March 17, 1985, Maria Hernandez survived. Shot in the face, survived by instinct, raising her keys, deflecting the bullet. Moments later, her roommate Dale Okazaki, 34, was shot dead. March 27, 1985, Vincent and Maxine Zazera. Vincent, 64, was shot in his sleep. Maxine, 44, was stabbed, mutilated, and had her eyes gouged out. Ramirez left satanic symbols behind. Investigators knew this wasn't robbery. This was ritualistic terror. From that point forward, Ramirez spiraled into night-to-night carnage. Victims included William Doy, 65, and his wife. Elderly sisters who were raped and tortured. Children, some abducted and molested, then let go to spread his message. He didn't just kill. He laughed. He said things like, "I am the devil. Hail Satan. Swear your love for Lucifer or die." Experts couldn't profile him. He had no clear motive, no consistency, no signs of remorse. He was a drifter, a thief, a product of trauma, drugs, violence, and obsession. His teeth were rotting. He never bathed. He worshipped death and wore AC/DC and pentagram tattoos like they were armor. But the worst part? He left survivors on purpose. Not out of mercy, but to spread fear. He stared me in the eyes, one woman testified later, and said, "Tell them I was here. Tell them the Night Stalker came for you." By mid-1985, Los Angeles was in a full-blown panic. Gun sales skyrocketed. Security doors sold out. Parents kept children home from school. Entire neighborhoods stayed awake at night, waiting for a sound, a shadow, a sign. The media had given him a name, the Night Stalker. And Richard Ramirez embraced it. He watched the news, read the papers, smiled when anchors begged for the killing to stop, because now he wasn't just a killer. He was a legend, and that was the most dangerous part. You can haunt a city until the city decides to haunt you back. Now let's look at the mistake that ended his reign of terror. August 1985. The Night Stalker had grown careless, too confident, too famous. He left a shoe print at a crime scene, a .22 caliber shell casing, and finally, after a botched home invasion, a witness saw his face and gave police the description they needed. Then came the stolen car. Police found a fingerprint inside it, and for the first time the Night Stalker had a name, Richard Ramirez. A 25-year-old drifter from El Paso, Texas. A Satanist, a thief. A man already wanted for burglary, and now linked to nearly 24 brutal crimes. The LAPD released his mugshot to the public. Every news station ran it. Every newspaper printed it. "We know who you are now," the anchor said. "There's no place left to hide." On August 31, 1985, Ramirez stepped off a Greyhound bus into East Los Angeles, unaware that his face was now everywhere. He walked into a convenience store. A woman recognized him. He saw her mouth the words, "Al Matador, the killer." Then he saw his own face on the front page of a newspaper, staring back at him. He ran, tried to steal a car, tried to threaten a woman, tried to escape. But East LA wasn't afraid anymore. A group of locals, ordinary citizens, chased him down, beat him with a metal pipe, and held him until police arrived. By the time officers pulled him away, his face was bloodied and swollen. The man who stalked LA in the shadows had been dragged into the daylight. When police brought him in, he didn't resist. He gave a chilling smirk, and when asked about the charges, he lifted his hand, showed a pentagram scrawled across his palm, and whispered 2 words, "Hail Satan." But behind that show of darkness was a broken, impulsive man, who had finally lost control. He was charged with 13 counts of murder, 5 counts of attempted murder, 11 sexual assaults, 14 burglaries. The list was long, gruesome, and unforgettable. But the real battle was just beginning, because now the monster was in custody, and California was preparing for a trial that would last longer than his entire killing spree. He didn't want forgiveness. He wanted a stage. It was one of the longest, costliest trial in California history. Jury selection began in July 1988. By then, Ramirez had been in custody for nearly 3 years. But what followed wasn't a trial. It was a slow-motion horror film, played out in front of survivors, grieving families, and a jury that had no idea what they were about to witness. Ramirez was charged with 43 crimes including 13 murders, 5 attempted murders, 11 sexual assaults, multiple home invasions and burglaries. But this wasn't just about evidence. It was about evil on display. His courtroom behavior was a circus. From day one, Richard Ramirez mocked the system. He entered court with dark sunglasses, long unwashed hair, and an upside-down pentagram drawn on his palm. He turned to the cameras and smiled. He waved at reporters. He even flashed his palm and whispered, "Hail Satan." It wasn't insanity. It was performance. And it worked. The courtroom was packed. Media outlets camped outside daily. And in a disturbing twist, young women began showing up to support him. writing him love letters, calling him misunderstood, even sending him lingerie. The press dubbed them the Night Stalker groupies. His defense team tried everything. Claimed childhood trauma. Claimed drug addiction. Suggested possible schizophrenia. They painted Ramirez as a damaged soul, raised in a broken home, exposed to death and abuse from a young age. But prosecutors pushed back hard. This man isn't insane, they argued. He's cold, calculating, and obsessed with satanic symbolism, not because he's delusional but because he knows it terrifies people. And they brought receipts. Ballistics matched bullets to his stolen weapons. Footprints matched his obvious sneakers. Fingerprints, stolen items, DNA, all airtight. The evidence was overwhelming. One of the most gut-wrenching moments came when survivors described the attacks. A woman who was raped, then forced to swear allegiance to Satan. Children who were abducted and abused. Families who woke up to find both parents murdered beside them. Some witnesses broke down in tears. Others stared straight at Ramirez, refusing to give him the satisfaction of fear. He stared back and smiled. "I'm beyond good and evil," he told one reporter. "I'm not like the rest of you." Then came the verdict, September 20, 1989. After 4 years, over 100 witnesses, and 1,600 pieces of evidence, the jury returned with their decision. Guilty on all counts. Death sentence. Ramirez showed no emotion. When reporters swarmed him outside the courtroom, he offered one final message. "Big deal. Death always went with the territory. See you in Disneyland." It was the perfect ending to his performance. But for the families in the room, it wasn't theater. It was justice, finally delivered. The court sentenced him to die. But fear doesn't vanish that easily. After the trial, Richard Ramirez was sent to San Quentin State Prison, home to some of the most dangerous men in America. He would never leave. He lived on death row for 23 years, awaiting execution that never came. And during that time he became something worse than forgotten, a myth. Behind bars, Ramirez didn't fade. He thrived on the attention. He gave interviews. He grinned in photos. He responded to fan mail, thousands of letters from women, Satanists, and so-called true crime romantics. In 1996, he even married one of them, Doreen Leoie, a magazine editor who insisted he was misunderstood. She visited him for years, told reporters, "He's not the monster they say he is." But for the survivors, for the families, he was exactly that. A monster who never showed remorse. A man who carried death with him, even in silence. Richard Ramirez died on June 7, 2013 at the age of 53, not from execution but from B-cell lymphoma. He spent more than 2 decades on death row, far longer than his brief killing spree in 1985. When news of his death broke, many felt cheated. "He got to live," one victim's family member said, "longer than he ever gave our loved ones." There were no tears, no tributes, no memorial, just a whispered exhale across California. It's over. But the fear Ramirez introduced? That fear never really died. He changed how people locked their doors, how neighborhoods trusted outsiders, how Los Angeles saw itself. His spree redefined the term home invasion, forced law enforcement to rethink interagency cooperation, sparked massive interest in criminal profiling and forensic evidence. In many ways, he ushered in the modern age of serial killer fascination and the dangers of turning murderers into icons. Because Ramirez wasn't brilliant. He wasn't Hannibal Lecter. He was a broken man who chose evil over and over again. And for those he hurt, that choice still echoes. We don't tell these stories to glorify monsters. We tell them so we never forget what monsters look like. He never wore a mask. He didn't hide in shadows. He walked in, eyes wild, teeth rotting, armed with hate. And for one long summer, a man named Richard Ramirez held an entire city hostage. He didn't kill to silence his demons. He killed to feed them, to leave behind a scar, a whisper, a legend. He wanted the world to fear him, and for a time we did. But in the end, it wasn't the police or prosecutors who brought him down. It was a neighborhood, a city, people who were done being afraid. They dragged him into the street, beat him down and said, "Not one more night. Not one more body." Ramirez didn't die in the electric chair. He died old, in prison, watching his own mythology grow like a fungus in the corners of the internet. But we're not here to feed it. We're here to remember the victims, to understand the warning signs, to look at evil when it smiles, and say its name out loud, so it never gets to smile again. If this story shook you, hit that like button, and comment below. Do you think Ramirez was pure evil, or a product of trauma left unchecked? And if you want more true crime stories that don't flinch, that tell the truth, no matter how dark it gets, subscribe to 360 Shares TV. Because on this channel we don't just talk crime, we expose what it leaves behind.